Hey guys, welcome back to the Machiavelli Monkeys podcast. It's a podcast where we examine power and the human animal. We are continuing our study of Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince, doing chapters 18 and 19. I am your host, Aaron James, sitting here with my best bro.
What's going on, Lurker Mario?
Hell yeah. And so today we are talking about in what ways princes must keep the faith, and that we must avoid being despised and hated, which might be worded differently depending on your edition of The Prince.
Yes. How a prince should keep his word and on avoiding being despised and hated.
Yeah, so pretty similar stuff here.
Check it out. All right. Right into it. Chapter 18.
18. Keeping faith.
One sees from the experience of our times that the princes who have accomplished great deeds are those who have cared little for keeping their promises and who have known how to manipulate the minds of men by shrewdness, and in the end they have surpassed those who laid their foundations upon honesty.
Right on.
So this first chapter, 18, talks about how a prince should keep his word and the difference of the fox and the lion and beast and men.
Yeah, one of the big distinctions I saw I think it's a false distinction according to our modern anarchist principles. But he draws it. You must know then that there are two methods of fighting, one by law and one by force. The first is the method of men, the second of beasts. So he thinks that, I guess by force he means coercive power or military force, and then I guess lawfare. But law can only be, I don't know, unless it's cooperative and voluntary. Law is often also backed up by coercive force.
Yes.
So I wouldn't consider those two different as he would. But he's coming from the side of a statesman, as opposed to a sovereign individual, which is what we aspire to be. Merchant king, sovereign individual. Hashtag.
Yes, sir.
What's up?
Well, we would just be sponsoring these people. We'd be like, yeah, here's your tribute. What's going on? Make sure I pass inspection or whatever the hell. Send the guards to clean up the rabble in front of my store or whatever. Different times, right?
Right. So I guess, if you were a store owner and you had to use legal power, you'd know the laws. You have people trespassing. So it's like, I could shoot you in the face and maybe be guilty of tried for murder, or I could call upon the law and, let them handle that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they're going to do it, with justice. Justice. So he also does, after he talks about how to act as a beast, because he says can't always act as a good man, which is the things like how to keep the faith. If you keep the faith at the expense of your state, then you've lost.
Yeah.
So he says sometimes you got to act like the beast, which is he brings in the fox and the lion.
Right. And he's talking about how you need to, portray yourself to the people that you're a good person, right? That you should appear at all times to be merciful, faithful, have strong integrity and kindness, and above all, you must be religious or pious, right? And having these qualities and practicing them at all times is harmful. So it's like you need to know when to step out of these boundaries to get what needs to be done.
Yeah,
what's beautifully said about that first paragraph.
Yeah, he says, the prince must take care that nothing goes out of his mouth, which is not full of those qualities that Lurker just named. Lurker Mario.
Yes, sir.
But other than that, you got to act like the fox or the lion, and these two qualities is you act like the fox because you don't want to be taken advantage of. The fox avoids traps because the fox is smart.
Cunning.
Yeah, cunning. And you also got to be like the lion which is ferocity, to scare away the wolves, is how he puts it poetically in this chapter. So, and then he also says you got to be able to disguise this character well.
Yeah, because everyone sees what you seem to be, but few perceive what you are.
Yeah. Quote, men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived, which is, we call them sheeple.
Yes.
And every time I think about it, my heart kind of sinks. But I'm starting to believe that the state and the sheeple might just be facets of natural ecology as far as human society is concerned.
Yeah, hierarchical. And the majority of people reside in the herd. Yeah.
Well, not even just hierarchical, which is like fundamental, but that there might always be some kind of state force, even if it's localized and more controlled. But then there's a churning, some discontent, someone's going to rise up and use military force because of either egotistical drive or for necessity even. So, which is why I'm playing with the idea of agorism might be the superior form of anarchism. It's just have the network there to work outside the law, black and gray markets and everything else, so you don't have to rely upon the state. Or you only need to do it as much as necessary. But to like try to take on the state from a serf's presence, unless you're buddied up into another coercive force, it's just goofy. So, and I'm not saying you shouldn't even work politically like in the Libertarian Party. Mises Caucus represent.
Right.
Vote for Dave Smith. But why not attack the problem from all angles? But if you're going to be a statesman, play the game of power, two qualities, the fox and the lion. Be smart. Don't get fucked over. Don't go into someone's trap. Unless you're playing that game, you're making that move, that feint, and then you can't be weak or be perceived as weak. The more ferocious you are, you might not even have to use this power if you just appear as such.
Right. Because then you'll be unpredictable and the men will fear you. We covered in our previous chapters. Yeah, ordinary people are always deceived by appearances and by the outcome of things. In a world there is nothing but ordinary people, and there is no room for the few, while the many have a place to lean.
There is no room for the few, while the many have a place to lean. What do you think he means by that?
It's like hard to go against the counter narrative, right?
So he's saying that the few can't supplant the one, we'll say, because the majority are leaning on them. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, this is why in the next chapter we're about to talk, like the prince has to maintain popularity amongst the people, because then people will be even more scared to strike out against him. Because like if somebody's already hated by the majority of the population, then if people go and attack him, they'll be doing the majority of the population a favor rather than incurring their wrath once the action is taken. Right.
No, that makes sense. And just a side note in my chapter here, I don't know if this is the original quotation of the end justifies the means, but it is written here and underlined in my book by someone who had this book before I did in college.
Oh, nice.
So, but yeah, so that is, so basically you're playing power, you're going to put off all the qualities of
great person,
of virtuousness, and then when you have to, don't keep your word. Which will bring us to chapter 19, that we must avoid being despised and hated. And he repeats himself briefly at the beginning of the chapter. Says, he will chiefly become hated, as I have said, by being rapacious and usurping the property and women of his subjects. Simple stuff. If you want to keep people happy,
don't fuck with their shit.
Leave their shit alone.
Yeah.
This is why we don't like taxes and all this bullshit, and people riding up on your woman, unless you're like some super alpha dude's just like, fuck, I go find some other
bitches
somewhere else. Oh man, get super filthy, but
yeah. And the personifications, I guess, are what's the word? The attributes that you want to avoid are frivolousness, being too changeable, so like changing your opinion makes you seem soft, effeminate, cowardly, and irresolute. Right? And so you want to strive for greatness of spirit and dignity and strength, right? So all masculine qualities.
Well, I think you could sum up all these words in one word, which is weakness.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Avoid weakness.
Avoid weakness, because that's effeminate, or
frivolous.
Frivolous. Well, frivolous is spendy, like not being too serious. So maybe dishonorable, changeable, timid, just of low character.
Yeah.
In that sense. And they say if you don't have these qualities and are not if you're not screwing with your people and, taxing them into oblivion, you should be pretty safe. It says the prince has two kinds of fear, one internal with regards to his subjects and one external as regards to foreign powers. He can always defend himself from the people with good arms and good friends, and he will always have good friends if he has good arms.
Yeah.
Which is a great line.
Yeah, I think he also says that it's easier to maintain internal affairs as long as external affairs are taken care of as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, external pressure is just another weight on the people's mind. Mm-hmm. So if people are not worried about terrorist attacks,
or barbarians burning their farms down,
or the French or the Spanish, it can be easier to maintain order because then you don't have to worry about what's within your sphere of influence, unless of course you've not been reading his book and being a poor leader and not taking care of your shit
and allowing for conspiracies to fester
and become cancerous. Yeah man. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then we go into case studies, right? Starting with Marcus Aurelius. So he goes into
the Roman
emperors, and he talks about how, unlike the statesmen of his time, that Roman emperors not only had to deal with the subjects and foreign powers or the nobility and the people, but they also had the third branch that they had to worry about, which was the military might.
The soldiers, a whole cast of people.
And so Marcus Aurelius is really one of two in this series of examples of a good emperor, right, inherited by birthright, right, and he had all the right qualities. So he was military minded enough to satisfy the soldiers, and then he was also civil enough to like satisfy the populace. Right, philosopher king went to war. I think 16 years, something like that.
I don't know. He was like golden age leader,
emperor.
And then his son Commodus. You might have seen Gladiator.
Yeah.
Of course, in Gladiator, I think he has two of these characters in this chapter fighting against each other. Except, well, I guess Maximus could be Maximinus. Some shepherd from
Thrace.
Spain or Thrace or whatever.
Spain in the movie,
fighting against Commodus, who's this cowardly, showboaty, I'm going to go down and fight gladiators, swing my emperor sack around.
The words he uses, Commodus is degrading to his imperial majesty, right? He became contemptible, hated, and despised, and he was murdered.
Yeah, a lot of these guys get murdered.
That's good example of not listening to the words of Machiavelli. Well, I guess this was before his time, so it's a good example.
Yeah, definitely a good case study.
So then he goes from Marcus, he goes to Pertinax, who said he was made emperor against the will of the soldiers, and the soldiers could not tolerate his righteous manner, and he had the added contemptibility of just being an old man. And so he came to a ruin under the initial stresses of his rule.
Yeah, the one passage I've marked here is that it may be seen that hatred is gained as much by good works as by evil, and therefore, as I said before, a prince who wishes to maintain the state is often forced to do evil. Mm-hmm. For when the party, whether the popular soldiery or nobles, whichever it be that you consider necessary to you for keeping your position, is corrupt, you must follow its humor and satisfy it.
And this is what also killed Alexander, right? So Alexander was an example of such goodness. You know, he never executed people without trial, but he was considered effeminate, ruled by his mother, and despised and murdered by the army.
Yeah, fallen into contempt.
Yeah.
Conspired, murdered.
They're just like, this dude's not a soldier.
This dude's gay.
Yeah, exactly. Dead.
Kill him.
Yeah.
Dead.
Ridiculous. The other good example, aside from Marcus Aurelius, they go through in this chapter is Severus. Mm-hmm. And he exemplifies both the fox and the lion. Mm-hmm. Right? So he marched on Rome. So after Pertinax died, Julian came to power. So Severus marched on Rome before letting his intentions be known. So he just like got his army and was like, we're going to the capital, bro. And then like he hadn't made a declaration like, I'm going to go be emperor, whatever. He went over there. He got there. He murdered Julian, right? Mm-hmm. Avenged Pertinax. And then out of fear, the Senate crowned him emperor, right? And then he manipulated his two rivals.
Oh, yeah.
Albinus and Persenius Niger. So these two people, this dude Severus is in the capital. He's in Rome.
He's in the Central Kingdom.
Yeah, and then you have Persenius Niger is in Asia, and Albinus is in France. I want to say
Gaul. Yeah.
And so what he does is recognizing that he doesn't want to go to war with these two powers at once. So he sends a letter to Albinus, and he's just like, look, I'm going to crown you Caesar over there.
We can both be emperor.
Yeah, exactly. You control the West. It's too far out over there. He's like doing, right, appealing to him, who he agrees. He's like, you're right, I am great. I am Caesar. I can rule these lands. And so while he does that, he heads east to Asia, destroys Persenius, takes his control of the region, and then marches back to the capital. And then he publicly goes, Albinus is ungrateful for what I've done to him, and he's, murderous. He's conspiring to murder me, the emperor of Rome. And so he heads over to France and takes his state and takes his life. And so using the right amount of cunning and the right amount of force, he re-centralizes power over the kingdom. Which is Machiavelli's like, follow this guy.
Yeah. Well, in the end of the chapter, he says it might be impossible to be him. But his next case study is Antoninus,
the son of Severus.
Yeah, because this is where he starts talking about cruel people or people who weren't murdered because they were weak. But this is one guy apparently who was so badass that he was going over. I mean, he's just a badass, endured many hardships, didn't need any luxury, but he was killing so many people and being so severe in his rule over the population that he became hated by all the world, and he began to be feared by those about him to such an extent that he was finally killed by a Saturn. So basically, he had a dude suicide him. Yeah. Like, he was just in the army, and some dude's just like, this is what I wish someone would do to Stalin, where it's just like, screw it.
Fuck him.
Yeah, and he says that if you can't stop someone who's willing to give up his life, because there's no price he can be further paid except maybe the blood of his family.
Right. She goes on to say that a prince shouldn't worry too much about these people, for they are rare.
Yeah, apparently they are, because we've endured, or humanity's endured many unsavory leaders. We've already gone over Commodus. And we briefly mentioned Maximinus, who's just another warlike dude, but people didn't like him because he came from humble beginnings.
And then he was cruel. militaristic, and then like the kingdom just revolted against him. Africa revolted, the Senate revolted, Rome revolted, and then during the siege of Aquila, his soldiers, fearing his cruelty, are just like, whatever, let's just kill this dude. We don't need to finish this siege. Yeah. And then he talks about Heliogabalus, Macrinus, and Julian.
He says he will not speak of them.
Yeah, because they were universally hated.
Yeah, entirely contemptible.
Immediately disposed.
Right.
Yeah.
So then he brings up a couple of counter cases. He talks about the Turks and the Sultan.
Oh, and how they had to appeal to the military based on their culture.
Yeah, because I guess the military culture is just endemic in the society, and they kind of like elected the Sultan, so it's like you don't go against them. So yeah, basically, wherever you're at, or if you're on a statesman, you don't want to be despised or hated, which we could say is why Hillary Clinton lost.
Yeah, dude.
Because despised and hated.
And the same thing for Trump, second term.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And then
more people voted against him out of hatred for him rather than the love of Joe Biden.
And then the only reason Kamala got in is because she piggybacked.
Yeah.
So when I saw today that I saw a headline, so I didn't read it. So I'm doing the Twitter sin where I guess they're trying to get Biden out by like one of the
25th Amendment.
25th Amendment.
Yeah.
And that they're going to try to do the same thing to Kamala, that she's not fit.
And then Nancy Pelosi will be president. Fantastic.
Gross. Of course, I think this might be it, bro. This might be like the crumbling of the state. Like, who's gonna lead us? Like this? No. Or maybe we could finally like Joe Rogan or somebody.
That'd be cool. I mean, how many recalls can you go through before? I mean, I don't know how it's set up. I'm just talking shit.
Yeah, I don't know, bro. I took political science a long time ago, and I think they don't have a clause for or their clause for secession is not even,
it's not there anymore.
Not given any attention whatsoever.
Yeah.
But guys, that's two chapters on how princes must keep the faith and avoid being despised and hated.
Yeah.
So
hell yeah.
It's been a short and tight one today. Studying Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. We'll probably tackle 2-3 chapters next time we're here. I think we got 2 episodes to finish the book, and then we'll probably do an overview if we feel like it, and then probably move on to the next book, whether it's going to be probably 48 Laws of Power or
great book, by the way,
or the Machiavellians, depending on how we're feeling. But you can catch us at www.machiavellianmonkeys.com.
Yes, sir.
Which is our Podbean host, where you can find all of our episodes there. You can also find us on YouTube, Machiavellian Monkeys, and then you can probably find us on most of the big podcast places, Spotify, iTunes.
Good stuff.
Google. So, yeah, it's been a good one. So, I've been Aaron James sitting here.
Lurker Mario, hit me up at Lurker Mario, Twitter. What's good?
Hell yeah. And then we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.